This is a Salvia divinorum 10 extract, trip report by Drug Geek, posted to erowid.org on September 14, 2010. I have always called myself a drug geek. I am a person who watches the way chemicals change the mind. I have tried many substances that are called legal highs. Those include wormwood, amanita mushrooms, blue lotus, kratom, kava kava, dextromethorphan, morning glory seeds, and salvia. I have taken them in many different settings. Most of the time I stay in my own bedroom. I like the privacy. I have never needed a trip sitter. I have taken enough trips that I do not expect anything unusual. The last few months I have been busy with college classes. I did not have any free evenings for a while. In the past I would have used salvia 6 times a week, sometimes 2 times in one day. When a weekend finally opened up, I decided to make it a night to remember. I wanted to try a 10 times extract for the first time. I measured about 50 milligrams of the extract and packed it into a small bowl. I felt a little nervous as I looked at the bowl. I have read that the mind can be influenced by expectations. I thought that my nervousness might cause a bad experience. At the same time, another part of my brain reminded me that after the first hit, I usually feel better and want to continue. I decided to go ahead because I did not have another day that would work. I also set up a webcam on my computer so that I could record the whole thing for later review. I have done this before, and it helps me see what I missed while I was inside. The first hit, I placed the bowl on the table and lit the salvia. I held the smoke in my lungs for about 30 seconds before exhaling. The effects did not come immediately. They started as a slow creep over my body. I felt as if I were falling forever. My mind left the room and entered a place where there was no ground, no ceiling, no walls. I could not remember anything that happened before the fall. I could not see my own arms. My arms seemed to swing around on their own when the peak arrived. It was a strange feeling that I could not fight because I did not know that anything was wrong. After the most intense part of the fall, the feeling began to ease. I started to notice a lamp on the nightstand. The light from the lamp was not a smooth glow. I could see each individual strand of light as if it were a thin wire. The strands hit my skin and bent around me. It looked as if the light was trying to hold me in place, as if it were a barrier between one world and another. In that moment, I thought that the light might be stopping my mind from moving into another dimension. I promised myself that on the next hit, I would turn the lamp off so that the light would not interfere. The second hit, after the first hit, I cleaned the bowl and prepared a second dose. I wanted to be sure that I got all of the material out of the pipe. I took a second hit and held the smoke for about 15 seconds. This time the effects arrived much faster. I could feel the change within a few seconds of exhaling. I lay down on my bed and waited. My body felt detached. I felt like a spirit floating above my own flesh. Above my head, a black vortex began to spin. It was a dark funnel that seemed to pull at my thoughts. I felt myself being drawn into the vortex. The vortex turned into a series of tubes that twisted and turned in impossible ways. I was pushed through those tubes and then expelled on the other side. When I emerged, I was no longer in my bedroom. I was attached to the side of a massive skyscraper. The building was taller than any structure I had ever seen. It was made of a material that reflected light in strange patterns. The skyscraper had windows, balconies, streetlights, and parked cars. The streets were empty. No people were moving. The whole scene looked like a city that had been built by an intelligent species, but there were no living beings in sight. The building itself seemed to be made of my own image. My face, my body, my silhouette appeared over and over on the surface of the tower, as if the tower was a mirror that reflected me in every direction. I stared at the image and wondered how I could tell if it was really me or just a projection. In the time it takes to blink, I was pulled back into my own body. I was lying on the bed again. My breath felt shallow. I thought that I might be holding my breath for too long. I tried to force air in and out of my lungs. The air felt heavy, as if it had no oxygen. No matter how hard I breathed, my body still demanded more air. The room was dark, so I could not see when I started breathing normally again. My breathing seemed to break the connection I had with the other world. When the link broke, the skyscraper began to shake. The panels on the tower vibrated violently and then fell away like dead leaves. The sight was disturbing. I felt a surge of panic. I realized that I was alone with no sitter. My confidence in handling the trip alone began to crumble. The two worlds began to mix. I could see the door to my bedroom, but the skyscraper was still there, superimposed on the familiar walls. A new force seemed to surround my body. It pressed on my ribs and threatened to crush my bones. I knew I needed to get away from this pressure. I decided that the only way to escape was to leave the room. I have learned from previous trips that reality usually moves from left to right, so I chose to walk to the left. I stood up slowly, feeling the floor under my feet, and moved toward the left side of the house. After about 10 feet, I reached the south wall. I sat down on a chair and tried to catch my breath. The trip was still active. My breathing was still irregular. My mind kept switching between being in my own body and being part of the skyscraper. I imagined how strange it would look if someone walked into the room at that moment. I would be sitting in a chair, facing a wall, panting as if I had never breathed before. I tried to convince myself that the worst part would end soon. I told myself over and over that it would only last 8 minutes. In reality, the experience stretched to about 15 minutes. During that time, I received a sudden insight about time. It seemed as if I had known this truth all my life but had been taught to forget it. Time, I realized, is a human invention used to measure change. If time does not exist, then there is no beginning and no end. Many questions about life disappear. Humans measure time by watching the movement of the sun and the rotation of the earth. Those are just cycles of energy. Energy moves in circles forever. The number of cycles does not matter. This idea felt simple and profound at the same time. After a few more minutes, my breathing returned to normal. I lay back down on the bed and allowed my body to relax. When the effects finally faded, I turned off the webcam. I thought that I had captured something extraordinary. I watched the first video from the night. The first hit showed only my arms flailing in the air. It was odd but not too surprising. The second video, however, did not match my memory. The video showed me taking the hit, then lying still on the bed. There was no footage of me running out of the room, no footage of the skyscraper, no footage of me falling. The video simply showed me lying there for 5 minutes, then my feet moving a little as if I were trying to walk, then stopping, then lying still for another 8 minutes before I turned off the camera. I could not understand how the video could be so different from what I remembered. I could still feel the texture of the paint on the wall that I thought I had hit. I could still feel the pressure of the invisible force that had surrounded me. I wondered if I had truly left my body and entered another dimension, or if my mind had simply created a very vivid story. The experience changed the way I think about reality. I realized that I had gone far beyond what most people consider safe experimentation. I felt scared to try Salvia again. I decided to keep only a very small amount of the leaf for a possible future test. I gave the rest of the material to friends and family who might be curious. I wrote down everything I could remember because I wanted to have something to look back on. Answers to the questions I posed before the trip. I wrote at the beginning that I wanted to know why people report experiences of other realities. I also wanted to know if Salvia could open a door to a different dimension of consciousness, and whether that would prove the existence of intelligent life in those dimensions. My sample size is 1, so I cannot claim any scientific proof. I can only share my personal impression. Could I experience another real dimension of consciousness? I would like to believe that I did. The sensations I felt, the images I saw, and the insights I gained all felt as if they were real. I have read many other reports, and many of them contain similar feelings of falling, of being in a city without people, of seeing one's own image repeated on structures. That does not mean that every user will see the same thing. There may be many different dimensions that a person could visit, each with its own rules. Was there any proof of intelligent life in the alternate reality? I did not see any living beings. However, the presence of a city, of streets, of parked cars, of a skyscraper, suggests that some intelligence must have built it. That is the only evidence I have. I do not claim that any of this is proven. It is simply my account of what happened on that night. I hope that other readers can learn from my experience and think carefully before they decide to try a substance that can move the mind so far from ordinary perception. Thank you for reading.